Moments, our host, Michael Stickler, will be joining us with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Michael. He's a 4-time best-selling author, philanthropist, publisher, and highly sought-after conference speaker. His passion is to see life-changing books find their audience. Books that will change your life, change your business, and change your soul. And he specializes in helping authors and business owners achieve publishing success. Won't you please welcome Michael Stickler?
Well, thank you, Ron, for the great introduction. Again, it's Mike Stickler here on the Compendium Podcast, where we get together with life-changing authors and speakers, consultants, and talk with them about their ideas on how to improve your life, improve the life of your business, your spiritual life, the life of your family, and the life of your community. And today we've got James Potter. Excuse me. James Potter is written his first book, and it's quite an interesting target audience he has. He calls the book The Successful Manager. Now, James is the Chief Financial Officer at Dunes Point Capital. In his prior role, Potter was the Senior Managing Director and Global Practice Leader at Blue Ridge Partners, a global management and consulting firm that focuses exclusively on accelerating profitable revenue growth. He has helped over 100 organizations and their leadership teams. The measure of his success is not just a pretty PowerPoint presentation or 2x2 framework cards, but the results he drives for his clients and their organizations. And isn't that what we're all looking for, is results? Potter is also founded 2 software companies. So he's actually put this to practice. He's not a consultant. He's been in the trenches that were acquired, and both of those companies were acquired. And he has worked in public organizations such as General Electric and NBC Universal. So James, welcome to the Compendium Podcast.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike, for having me.
So your book, The Successful Manager, who did you target this book to?
Well, I realized many years ago when I started as a consultant that there were really a few commonalities of companies that were successful in terms of growth. As I mentioned, I was a growth consultant in the past. And the companies that were differentiated on growth really focused on their employees that were going from individual contributor to manager. The companies that were lagging in terms of sustainable growth didn't focus on those employees and left them to their own devices. And they're really a pivotal portion of an organization. And so when I looked at the book and I looked at the problem, it was really about that audience of, I'm transitioning to be a manager and I'm just left to my own devices. How do we help that? There are people that are also past that transition that are not the greatest managers in the world and could use some brush up in the areas. And that's about 20% of the audience, I think, that reads it. The majority of the audience are going through the transition from individual contributor to manager, or have just gone through it in the last 12 months or so.
So what happens to those guys that enter into the corporate world in that kind of middle management and they're not very successful at it? What ends up happening with those men and women?
So oftentimes you see those people that aren't successful start to be pigeonholed into this individual contributor or subject matter expert role. And some of them like that role, and they thrive in it because they know they're not good managers. And other ones start to get agitated because they say, well, why am I not moving upwards? Why am I not able to run a team? And the answer is they're not a good manager. And you have to have good managerial skills to continue to move up in that corporate world. And so we liken learning to be a good manager almost like learning a language at a really young age. If you learn that language at a really young age, it's actually pretty easy to learn that language. And you develop great habits and you become bilingual or trilingual, whatever it is. But as you get older, it becomes harder to learn that language and you get stuck in your ways. And so we really emphasize learning what it takes to be a good manager, learning what a good manager looks like early on, so you don't get pigeonholed, and it's a lot easier. Because
Right.
changing habits when you're older in the workforce, specifically when you have a family, you don't have time to really do that self-reflection as much as you could when you were younger, is challenging.
So the big picture, or really, what was the impetus of putting your ideas and your experience into a book form?
So it was simply helping people. So as over the last 15 years, I've worked with about 125 different organizations, all the way from 50 plus billion-dollar companies like MetLife and John Deere and their leadership teams, down to $30 million little revenue companies around lighting, let's say. And you just observe that the vast majority of those companies don't have good managerial training. You'll walk into, let's say, your annual review and you're an individual contributor and they say, congratulations, you're going to become a manager in a month. And people oftentimes go, holy moly, what do I do?
Right.
And nothing. The response is just silence on the other side, silence from the other company. A lot of these companies focus on leadership training, but they don't focus on managerial training. And some people inherently are better managers than others because they have better human skills. You can always develop better skills to be a manager, but you just kind of left to your own devices. And when we saw that, we basically said there is a real challenge here. And there is a real opportunity to truly help people get better. And that's what the book is about. The book is just about, we hope that if you read it, that you learn not just the high level of what it looks like to be a good manager, but all the way down to the how in every single aspect of how do I operate? What is my system as a good manager, and how do I impact other people below me?
So when they've got a hold of your book and they're going through it, what are the takeaways? What are the real applications that they can apply to their own career, their own experiences, to make them that more successful manager?
So I'll start at that high level. So one of the first chapters in the book is really about always being a teacher. And that's an acronym that we use. And it means that you should always be teaching your employees, but it really stands for transparency, empathy, adaptability, clear communication, humility, empathy, and responsiveness. And those are really important qualities of a manager. And we start to bring you the understanding of why those are important, but how do you actually put those into practice? What are the tips you should use to make sure you're transparent or to make sure you're responsive? Responsive is a really easy one. A lot of managers that are not very effective will get an email from an employee and won't answer it right away. And it's okay that you don't answer it in depth right away, but then that employee below you is just waiting, like, when is that manager going to review my stuff? When are they going to do things? And you as a manager need to show the respect to your employees that, hey, I received this. And it's okay to say, okay, thanks, I got this. I'll review it tomorrow. I'll review it in a week. But understanding the impact of doing that, developing that mutual respect and giving some responsive nature is really important. So that even that first chapter goes from that high level of what are the characteristics to bringing down to what you need. Another one that's really important in my mind is people are terrible, oftentimes, or most of the time, at giving feedback. And so our system is actually called SBIS, of how to give feedback in any situation. And so you as the manager, you state the situation, you state the behavior that person exhibited or what they did, you talk about the impact that behavior made, and then you talk about what the solution could actually be. Because the value of that is actually taking you as the manager out of the equation and being the bad guy and just saying, look, these are very factual. Like, this was the behavior, this is the impact that it made on me or on someone else, whatever it is. Too many managers, have the feedback sandwich, like, you're great. Now you did this wrong, but you're still awesome, right? That feedback sandwich doesn't work. Too many managers don't use facts. There's lots of things, but just sticking to that SBIS framework when you give feedback is really important. So there's lots of little examples throughout the book, but we try and cover the gamut of really what is managerial 101, but let's make it useful for you.
That's phenomenal. Now, this being your first book, what have you learned about yourself in writing and being an author?
Well, step one is I absolutely needed a copywriter. I needed a copy
Right.
editor. My grammar could use a lot of improvement. That would be step one of just writing my first book. So I'm very glad that was the case. She was incredibly valuable. The other thing I've learned is I have a big potential impact to give to the world. And it's all about making individuals better. But the more that I've engaged with people that have read the book, it's also forced me to do more self-reflection on what I could have improved in the book, how I can improve myself. So I would say it's probably three things just off the top of my head. One is, hey, get better at just your simple grammar. And thank you for my editor. Two is really thinking about, okay, I have an impact on the world, keep that going because it's working. And then three is, just always do that self-reflection because you have opportunities to get better for yourself in every aspect.
That's excellent. And if you were to write this book again, because I know that most authors, once they've got the book completely complete and shipping, what do you wish you would have talked about more, or maybe something that developed a little bit more that you would like to have included in this book? And maybe it's going into your next book, I'm not sure, but share with our audience there, maybe something that's just not in the book, but you wish was there.
So we finalized the book during mid to late 2020.
Okay.
And in the book, we actually had a small section. It's not the depth of the book, but how to manage a remote team. Because as you're promoted as a manager, oftentimes nowadays you are now managing more of a remote team. We talked a little bit about COVID and the implications as an example for managing remotely, but our next version of the book will go much deeper into, how do you manage remotely? How do you develop more of a relationship with people under you remotely? That's a really big one that we didn't hit so far. We talked about managing remotely. What are the tools you should use? What is the type of cadence in terms of connecting virtually with people versus in the office, because you don't get those quick coffee breaks and talking about that. But we didn't talk about the long-term impact of managing a team remotely and what it means when you're really sustainably remotely. You're not getting in together every month, every quarter. So we would definitely include more of that.
That's excellent. So going forward, your reader has completed finishing the book. They've taken some notes. They're excited about what they've done. They're starting to apply it. How can they reach out to you and get more information, make a connection with you?
So always available anytime. If you go to thesuccessfulmanager.com, there's a contact us, and that email will go right to myself and my co-author, Mike Kavanagh. And we're always very willing to give some of our time and talk to anyone that wants to talk about what's the problem I have? How do I become a better manager? I'm struggling with an individual employee. I get that all the time. This employee will not take feedback. This employee is not moving in a certain way. What's the right way to address that employee? What's the right way to manage upwards to my managers to help me address that employee? So I would encourage anyone, feel free to always shoot a note and we can schedule time to chat anytime. Because the purpose of the book is to help people that want to be a better manager, be a better manager. And so if that means us giving some individuals their own time as well, that's really important for us to do.
And you're doing some consulting and some speaking, the two of you?
Yeah, so we both, my co-author Mike does more one-on-one coaching than I do, but I do speaking engagements for organizations, and I also do workshops around managers, so we can get a group of managers in a company together to talk about a traditional training. So absolutely, yep.
And when the reader closes the book, and I know you're hard here, but when the reader closes the book, what do you really want them to do?
So one of my favorite quotes was given to me 20 years ago when I worked on a ranch. And it was given to me by a really old cowboy. I think he was probably 75 on his horse, and we were on a ride together. And he said, as a good rider, the horse you get off should not be the same horse you got on. and it's your responsibility to make that change for the better. And that really struck with me, and we're trying to capture that in the book. And so when someone closes that book, I want them to understand that the way that they get better in life, the way that they succeed, let's say in life and in the corporate world, is by making someone else better. And there's an opportunity to do that with every interaction you have with everyone around you. And so I hope people just internalize that when they close the book. That's kind of how I've always operated after I really internalized that quote. And by the way, on that ride, I was bucked off the horse, and I'm pretty sure I was changed for the better.
Right.
And the horse was not. But that's why I want people to read the book, because I truly believe if you focus on improving other people, you improve faster yourself, and you become better.
That's right. So basically, you want them to become a better manager.
100%.
That's great. Well, I appreciate your time today. The Successful Net Manager is the name of the book. You can find it right here on our website, or maybe it's right up here. I'm not really sure, but it's somewhere on this page. And I want to make sure that you get a copy so that James can make a difference in your life and make a difference in your career. This is the Compendium Podcast. And next, we're going to be interviewing another incredible author, incredible speaker, an incredible consultant who is making a difference in people's lives. We air every Monday and Wednesday, so make sure that you click and like us and follow along as we share some important aspects of life, family, your spirituality, your business, your career, all of the things that will make a difference in your life and in your community. Until next time, may God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium Podcast.